A very happy Monday, especially if you're an Eagles or Kansas City Chiefs fan. Welcome to the Early Edge, brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. What a couple of games we had yesterday. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl, and we're going to talk about our best bets for a Monday, like we always do on the Early Edge. The chat is chatting. We love to see what's going on there. Hit the like button if you could, and let's take a look at how we did yesterday and on Friday. This is a complex recap screen. Look at the Kenny Gainwell. We've got an X next to Kenny Gainwell because he got injured, but look at the heartbreak emoji there. You got to love to see that from Ben. We go 11-8 though. 11-8 isn't a fantastic, but it's certainly a winning couple of days. So we're going to go ahead and take that. A couple of heartbreak. Kenny Gainwell, Kent State losing by 2. And the line there, of course, was +1.5. With credit to Buckets, 2 out of 3. Danny Brasco had a nice day. Larry Hartstein hits his pick. I go 2 out of 3. Mike McClure hits his Chiefs over first half. You love to see that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, we've got a great show, and it's in part due to David Talk and Jay Rill and Wu-Tang 416 and KC3 and Joe Neuenfeld. Thanks for being in here. But let's go ahead and bring in the stars of the show. Wow, we have to react. What a crew we have on a Monday. We've got Mackenzie Brooks already repping the Eagles. We got Mike McClure, obviously repping the Kansas City Chiefs. And we got Larry Hartstein and myself kind of repping no team because we don't have a team in the Super Bowl like Mackenzie and Mike do. Mackenzie, I'm going to start with you. You're wearing the Eagles shirt or the jersey. How you feeling? Your reaction to yesterday?
Very exciting stuff. I think the best part of this is that typically nobody wants to root for Philadelphia, but now that the country's against the Chiefs, suddenly we're the team everyone wants to be behind. I'm like, we never are this team. This is so exciting. I promised I wouldn't make Kenny Gainwell my entire personality trait all week, and I did. And I'm still upset about it. And that was probably the most brutal beat of all time for my friends that got the 8.5 instead of the 7.5 that we got right before kickoff. Brutal beat. Hope Kenny's doing okay. But you know what? We'll take it for the Eagles dub.
Kenny's got 2 weeks to rest up, obviously. But yeah, that was bad because he was going to get there. We had in last night's show, we had Jeff Stenberg that was in our chat, and he said, take Kenny Gainwell 6+ carries. And it was a crazy number. Like, I don't know, it might have been like +14, something crazy, like +600, +1,400. And he was on his way to doing that, obviously. And then, of course, we see Will Shipley break one at the very end of the game, which probably would have been Kenny Gainwell's carry as well. But he would have gotten there anyway. Mike, your reaction to yesterday, like Kansas City, Buffalo, it was kind of more of the same. You know, when it came down to clutch time, Kansas City came through and the Bills didn't.
Yeah, more of the same. And you look, Patrick Mahomes was phenomenal. It was one of the better games he's had in his career. And it's just the added element of him using his legs. He just simply doesn't do it in the regular season. But that was pretty much the difference there for me. Credit to Andy Reid, obviously, always having that team prepared. And just feel bad for Josh Allen and the Bills. They're a great team. Josh Allen's one of the best quarterbacks in the game. It's just the unfortunate reality of the AFC conference right now. It's really, really tough. And I definitely feel for them because I am a huge Josh Allen fan.
So many legacies, Larry, kind of, I don't want to say squandered, but diminished because Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs and Spagnuolo and Andy Reid are just so good. I mean, we think of Lamar Jackson, we think of Josh Allen. What would they be if Patrick Mahomes wasn't in the AFC? Like, I don't know the answer to that question. And you could say the same in Tom Brady's era and some of these other eras. But your reaction, let's start, Larry, with Chiefs and the Bills. You know, I thought there was obviously some controversial calls. I don't think we need to get into that necessarily unless you want to. But I thought the game plan was a little odd from the Bills. I mean, James Cook was running the ball really well, and he just wasn't getting enough carries. And what's so interesting about that is we saw Mixon run the ball well. We saw the Steelers late in the year run the ball well against the Chiefs. That seemed to be an obvious vulnerability. But, I started to see Ty Johnson with 6 carries. I'm like, what are we doing here? Give it to James Cook.
You just took the words right out of my mouth. What I was going to say is the Bills probably wish they could have gone back and given James Cook those 5 carries, and they might be sitting here going to the Super Bowl. Yeah. And it's funny, Mackenzie referenced the Chiefs fatigue. I was traveling yesterday in a couple of different airports and on a plane, and people see this hat, which is a Super Bowl hat. It's not a Chiefs hat. It's a Chiefs 49ers hat. But when they see it, they see the Chiefs, and they were like groaning, and they were like, not again. We just don't want that again. And this was like 6 or 7 different people throughout the day during my travels mentioned that to me. But it was also the highest success rate ever drop back success rate for Patrick Mahomes. So credit to him, because their running game was not giving them much. And I think a lot of those were wasted carries that he had to overcome. So, yeah, but I do have some thoughts on the early game if you want to get into that.
Well, yeah, let's do that, and then we'll get to our picks. Mike, I know you've got a college basketball pick that we're going to start with, and we got a lot of NBA, some hockey picks from SportsLine, and I have a golf pick that I really love that I'm going to give out on a Monday, a nationality prop. So buckle up for that. Larry, here's the thing. Washington ended up getting blown out, but the score wasn't really indicative of what actually happened in the game, in my opinion. I thought, what's interesting about the Washington experience is it's kind of like, man, that could have been a winnable game if not for all the turnovers. But then again, I look back to the Detroit game, and it's like, well, obviously Detroit could have won that game if there weren't as many turnovers. But the turnovers on the Washington side were just so bad, just bad fumbles, good plays by the Eagles, but bad fumbles. I thought the Eckler fumble when it was 34-23 with an entire quarter left, I actually did think Washington was going to score on that drive because Eagles were having some trouble with Jaden Daniels. That could have been a game. It really could have been. And then, of course, it just gets out of hand. So your thoughts on that game, and then we'll move to our picks.
Yeah, I agree. That was a soft fumble by Eckler at midfield with the chance to at least get in a covering range. But when you hold the team to 4.5 yards per play, an explosive offense, that's just a credit to the Eagles defense. And what Quinyon Mitchell did again was super impressive. But the one thing is when they kicked the field goal on 4th and 3, I said the game is over. Why did they get away from their identity? They converted 4th and 5 and 4th and 2 on that same drive, and now you're at the 15 or 16 yard line. So even if you don't get it, you still have the Eagles having to march the long field, which is probably 1 or 2 rushes by Saquon.
Yeah, Mackenzie, you're chuckling. What's going on there?
No, it's true. It probably would be 1 or 2 long rushes. I was just saying in the chat, everyone's upset about the Chiefs. They're calling the Eagles America's team. I've heard that.
I can't believe it.
Obsessed with the Eagles now.
This is where we've come. We've come. Mike McClure is he's laughing all the way to the bank because he's been banking his Chiefs bets for, 3-4 years now, and they seem to always come through. All right, how about a bet for today? We had to spend a little bit extra time on some obvious topics. I might actually hold you three accountable later in the show. I'm going to do like a really quick hitter. What do you like for the Super Bowl against the spread? Chiefs are laying 1.5, 2 points, depending on where you look, I think. But let's start with some picks for today. Let's get to that. Southern Miss, Mike. Where are we headed?
Yeah, we're headed to the Sun Belt, college basketball. It's going to be Southern Miss and Troy. We're going to fade Southern Miss on their team total under 65.5 points here. 66, while it doesn't seem like a big number in college basketball, is a pretty big number in this matchup. We have contrasting styles here. Troy is a team that wants to play with a not very much tempo at all. And they're clearly the better team here, as evident by a double-digit spread. But when I look at this Southern Miss team, they just shoot very poorly overall. They're a terrible free throw shooting team. They are a terrible rebounding team. So we're talking almost 0 second chance opportunities here on the offensive glass. So for me, this is one where I think that Troy is just in complete control of this, playing at the tempo that they want. They've held 3 consecutive opponents under this number, and those opponents are simply better than this Southern Miss team here. So I think that with the road matchup here in conference play, 66 would be a really, really good outcome for the Southern Miss team. I think this number should be down to 63, 62.5. So I went under 65.5 here on the Southern Miss team total.
All right. Southern Miss team total under 65.5. Larry, we go from college basketball to the NBA, and you're headed to Norman Powell. I mean, this guy is so under the radar in terms of him just being such a contributor in the NBA. I feel like last year when he got traded, maybe it was 2 years ago, he just kind of seemed like a guy, and now he's putting up a lot of points. What do we like with Norman Powell tonight?
Yeah, in his 10th season, probably deserves to be an all-star, shooting 49% from the field, 43 from beyond the arc, 84 from the foul line. He's the leading scorer, and even though Kawhi is back, he's only playing 24 minutes. So I'm going to go Norman Powell over 21.5 points tonight against the Phoenix Suns, who were without one of their best defenders in Ryan Dunn. And they're also 23rd in defensive rating. He's played them twice. He's gone over once, but he comes in to this matchup getting over this number in 5 straight, 8 of 9. And he's just so efficient. That's what I love about this guy. And if we get the shot volume, which we've been getting lately, I love him to go over 21.5. And this is one that Prop Bet Guy is on as well. And you got to check out his analysis on SportsLine because he had a very interesting stat about above the break threes and how Norman Powell excels in that. And that's a weakness of the Phoenix Suns.
Wow. Well, you can get that analysis on SportsLine, obviously, which reminds me, we're not going to get to it right now, but there's a new SportsLine promo. So I don't want you to just kind of go to La La Land when I read the SportsLine promo, because this is a new one. And for those of you that are yet to be SportsLine members, you're going to want to listen in. But before we get there, how about some SportsLine picks? And before that, Eric David says, Norman Powell has been a cash register. Prop bet guy has been hammering him this season. Love to see that. Here we are. Towson money line plus 105. Again, Towson money line tonight plus 105. And the Philadelphia Flyers plus 1 at minus 130. Towson plus 105 and the Flyers plus 1 at minus 130. All right. I just segued nicely into the SportsLine first bet offer, $1,500 plus. Plus, this is the new part, a free subscription to SportsLine. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, sign up now and you will get up to $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM, plus a 1-year free subscription to SportsLine with bonus code SportsLine1500. Get exclusive members only picks for all major sports from proven models and 40+ Vegas experts, plus predictive tools for pick'em, brackets, player stats, and more. Get this offer in 4 easy steps. Download the BetMGM Sports app and register an account using bonus code SportsLine1500. Make your first deposit of at least $10. Place your first wager and receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if the bet loses. Claim your free 1-year subscription to SportsLine in your BetMGM inbox. That's an amazing offer. I mean, honestly, if you're a SportsLine member already, tell your friends. That is a really good way to get connected and get a free offer from BetMGM, but also to get that SportsLine subscription. That is really good stuff. All right, we got to get to some more picks. Mackenzie Brooks got a couple. I've got one. We'll do it right after this message from our partners.
We need your sports news anywhere.
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
All right. We are back on the Early Edge, brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Before I get to my pick, we're going to go around the horn here. Larry, I'm going to start with you this time. I believe the line is Kansas City minus 1.5. What do you like?
I'm a glutton for punishment. I'm going to be on the Eagles most likely, just because Kansas City down the stretch, the run defense has been very vulnerable, and the Bills got 147, but probably could have got more if they had stayed with it. And that's the angle I'm going to look at, because the Eagles obviously have the best running game that we've seen. So I think they're going to be able to stay in it that way. But, it's going to come down to the end, though. It's going to be a great classic game, I believe.
Mike, we've been working together for quite a few years. And you know what I'm going to say in this moment, because I'm an idiot. I'm going to say, I agree that the Eagles are going to win the game because of that running game. And because, what's so interesting is that the Bills made a choice not to go to the running game. They made a choice. I mean, granted, he had 13 carries, but he probably should have had 18. And the Eagles, they don't really have that choice. They don't, that's not an option for them. They just run the ball. And behind that offensive line and a good enough defense, I do kind of lean to the Eagles here. Tell me I'm crazy like you have the last 3 years, and you've been right every single time.
I'm not going to say it's crazy at all. You look on paper, I think it's pretty clear the Eagles are the better team. I think it was pretty clear the Bills are the better team and the Ravens are the better team. You still have to win the game on the field, though. And when you talk about Andy Reid, which is who I want to talk about, because there's simply no one better at preparing teams for games, particularly with additional time. Larry mentioned that stat. I know this is not quick. Sorry, I apologize.
No, go.
Larry mentioned the stat about Mahomes having one of the most efficient games in his career is because he had a receiver open in the flat at nearly all times because of the way they schemed them open. It wasn't some miraculous throw downfield that Mahomes was making time and time again. He's hitting a 6-yard pass to Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown, and then Travis Kelce when it matters. So for me, I just think the way that they can scheme things, I'm not betting against the Chiefs here. It's probably going to be just like I just did, to be honest with you. I'll tell you the play that I'm going to make while it's still available. It's going to be team total over 12.5 first half. They come out, they're prepared. They're going to score a touchdown on one of their first 2 drives. They're likely going to get into field goal range. The number should be 13.5, not 12.5. Probably will be by the time the game kicks, but it's still sitting 12.5 here. Likely going to play that and not play a side in the Super Bowl.
Very fair and objective truth being told by Mike McClure. All right, Kens, can we be objective on this one? What do we like?
2 things. One being, and I think you can do a very similar thing for this game as well. Last game I said, take 2 bets, take the Bills to win by 7-12 at plus 600 and take the Chiefs to win by 1-6 at plus 300, because we all know if it was going to be a close game, we know it's not going to be a Bills win. And that's exactly how that ended up. And I think you could play a very similar situation if the cards fall correctly with the Eagles here. Again, I think the Eagles team total, if you want to back the Eagles, but you're scared of the money line, Eagles team total over 24.5. They just have more and more production as the playoffs unfold. And I think that, the Chiefs did a really good job of stopping Josh Allen. But then when you have, sure, maybe they'll stop Hurts, but then you have Saquon Barkley. We've talked about the run D down the stretch. So having Barkley and having Brown getting back in rhythm, again, they're winning games without their wide receiver 1 being the star. So I feel like the upside's still there, which gives me confidence, at least for the offense to perform. So that's another way to look at it if you're, scared of the Chiefs voodoo.
All right. We move from the conventional to the unconventional. Big Cheesy's in the chat. He says Little Rock first half in college basketball, -6.5.
I love this time of year.
I know. This is fantastic. I got to research that. It just for the fun of it, if not to bet it. Wu-Tang 416 has been in the chat. I think he said in all caps, cheater Chiefs like 7 times already. So, I feel like I have to read. I know some people think that. I was disappointed in the line judges on that big spot because I just didn't understand the protocol on that. I don't think we have time to really delve into that in that show. We are going to talk more NFL on CBS Sports Network today at 12 o'clock. A lot more NFL, by the way. That's going to be a 30-minute show again on CBS Sports Network at 12. All right, finally, let's get to some more picks. I'm going to be quick on this one. Ludwig Aubert. I didn't have the greatest matchup. Actually, I just didn't have a good matchup week last week, but I did hit top Korean Sung Jae-im. And it wasn't a no-doubter because KH Lee was really good for almost the entire tournament until Sunday. But I really like this one. The other two, this is top Nordic. The other two are Victor Hovland and Rasmus Højgaard. What's so interesting about Victor Hovland, he hasn't been good in quite some time. And I don't expect him to suddenly bounce back in this signature event at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am. The other guy that's at longer odds that I think actually has a shot here is Rasmus Højgaard. He has been playing really, really well, mostly on the World Tour, European Tour. With that said, I don't think he's better than Ludwig Aubert, and I think it's a completely different ball game to come over to the PGA Tour. I think an interesting play on Rasmus is maybe to top 20 him at plus 160 and maybe try to hit both of these because Ludwig might beat him anyway, but it's kind of a hedge play at the same time. But I really like this number, -105. He only has 2 people to compete with, and right now, neither of them are the caliber of Ludwig Aubert, who has good experience here, by the way. So top Nordic, Ludwig, and we move on to some more basketball. Mackenzie, you got a couple of picks.
Yeah, I got some NBA props for us. A good old classic. 2 points and assists plays for me today. Going to start with the Charlotte Hornets, as all people should, with Mark Williams over 18.5 points and assists. 2 plays on minutes here. One being the minutes for Mark Williams, because it just seems like the last 2 seasons, he's either been hurt or sharing time with Nick Richards, who was traded recently. And since the trade, Williams has been playing major minutes here, and he scored just 19 plus alone in 4 of his last 6. So he has literally just been covering this with the points. But I also look at his assists, and he's had at least 2 assists in his last 7 games. The assists are there too, and there are a ton of game time decisions for the Lakers. Some are probable, AD is probable, but we've seen the Lakers, pull some things late in right before tip off when they really aren't supposed to. So take that for what you will as well. But again, just a play on minutes, a play on their own home court. When you look at other centers who average around 17 to 20 points the way that he does, they have a way better game at home against the Lakers, averaging 21 points and assists, 4-0 to this over in that situation. So that's why we like Williams. And then we're going to Boston here with Drew Holiday to go over his points and assist line of 14.5. Again, another play on minutes. You have Derek White, who's a game time decision. Al Horford is too. I understand that's not a direct correlation of positions here, but everybody on that team is just shooting threes. So hypothetically, the usage should just be higher for Drew Holiday if anyone on that Boston team is sitting on the bench. And again, a play on minutes. When he has 30 plus minutes, he's 32-14 to this over in his last 2 seasons. So we're looking at minutes for both of these guys here, just underrated players that just from sheer volume on the court, minutes on the court, should be able to go over their totals.
All right, Jeff Stenberg in the chat. He says Sabonis over 22.5 assists and rebounds at -110. He says is inevitable because that's how Jeff talks, right? The guy is a monster. By the way, when Jeff says something's like inevitable, sometimes it feels like a joke, but they end up hitting. And he had that crazy Gainwell thing that absolutely should have hit as well. Mackenzie, I got to ask you something before we get to the recap screen. I think I just saw in the chat that you like Xavier Worthy's rushing yards. I seem to recall last week, I can't remember if it was an official play, but I know on HQ or somewhere you were talking about Xavier Worthy over 3.5 rushing yards. Correct me if I'm wrong. That did hit. Do we like to go to him again for the Super Bowl in rushing?
Yeah, we do. I mean, he soared over this in the first half of this past game as well. I mean, we go from 3.5 to 4.5. It doesn't necessarily scare me too much because now I feel pretty confident that he will be getting at least 2 carries. But my ideal situation is he cash Worthy anytime touchdown we got the touchdown, but it would have been awesome if it was like the rushing yards into the touchdown would have been sick. We got both separately. I'm not here to complain, but I do think that it will still be part of their game script as it always is. Like you have Hunt, who's respectfully past his prime. You have Pacheco, who's not 100%. Like he is their most explosive running threat, in my opinion. Like I think they'll still continue to use him in that way. So I Andy Reid with a lot of time to cook on some game plans. I think they're going to get creative.
Mike, can I ask you something again before we get to the recap screen? Because this is kind of important in my opinion, because props are already out. Oh, yeah. Travis Kelce kind of like, I don't want to say he got shut down, but he just wasn't a focal point in last night's game. He only had a handful of catches. Of course, that was the one bet I lost. I hit 2 out of 3 over the weekend, but I lost to Travis Kelce, most receptions, plus 115. We saw what Zach Ertz did against the Eagles. I think that's partly because Nakobe Dean is out for the season. I think Worthy is going to have his role, but do we think Kelce is going to have a much bigger role than the AFC Championship, or do you think they're just going to go Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy like they did yesterday?
I think it'll be a lot of Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy still. Kelsey's still going to be involved, but I think Kelsey's real impact on that game, honestly, was simply trying to draw holding penalties. And I think that that's literally going to be a focus for him in this matchup as well. So he'll be involved. The one guy that I would speculate on, particularly if the game, like say Kansas City has a little bit of a lead, I do know they kind of want to get DeAndre Hopkins a postseason touchdown like this. I know that shouldn't be a priority, but I think it was pretty evident there. If you watch what they did at the end of the first half on that first down where they gave him that one target, they easily, it cost them points too. Because if they run the football there and don't get in, Bills don't have time to score that touchdown. They're looking at a field goal attempt. So I just have seen a lot of the talk there. I think Hopkins anytime touchdown is interesting only because I do think they still kind of force it that way.
All right. Well, we're going to be talking a lot more with respect to props in this game, obviously over the next 2 weeks, but it is important to note that obviously the props are out. So if you're a SportsLine member, you're probably going to see some props and some sides and some totals and some first quarter plays and all of that stuff in the SportsLine tool. So obviously be a member and get into that SportsLine Discord. Love that we're dropping the actual link here, discord.gg/SportsLine. Very important to be in there because guys like RJ and Larry and so many others from the SportsLine universe are just constantly in there churning out information and picks that you can take advantage of early instead of late. Let's get to the recap screen because we are late. I've got Top Nordic. This thing actually does start on Thursday. Last week it was Wednesday because golf didn't want to compete with the championship games. But Top Nordic, Ludwig Aubert, -105 tonight. Norman Powell over 21.5 points at -120. From Larry Hartstein, the Maestro. And then Southern Miss team total under 65.5 at -115 from Mike McClure. And Mackenzie Brooks has Mark Williams over 18.5 points and assists at -115. And Drew Holiday over 14.5 points and assists at -118. SportsLine picks aren't on here, but you saw them earlier in the show. I will repeat them back to you now. Oh, there they are. Wow, Ben is actually too good. Like, that's the problem. Everybody, compliments to Ben. Say, like, Ben has been such a force on this show. Towson moneyline +105 from JLC and the Philadelphia Flyers +1 at -130 from Matty Severance. Good stuff. A lot of picks. Hopefully we have another winning recap screen like we did today. And hopefully we have a winning Monday. Check us out on CBS Sports Network. Make sure your alerts are on the SportsLine YouTube channel. Gipper's picks, Ryan, David Talk, Joseph Akers, Big Cheesy, Christopher Witt, KC3, all of you. Thank you for being in here. Thanks for hitting the like button. Thanks for asking questions. Thanks for making comments and making some of your bets in the chat as well. We'll see you soon on the Early Edge. On behalf of Mackenzie Brooks, Mike McClure, Larry Hartstein, and of course, Ben on the 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s. I'm the Counselor of Cash. This is the Early Edge. We rest our case.